So, what Americans view as a normal, polite conversation, travelers are finding deeply welcoming.
A Brit trying Sonic in America for the first time. Let's go. Oh my days, look at all of these options. Look at that milkshake. Could we get one of every item off the $2.50 menu, please?
The British were once very confident about America. They say, America is dangerous. America is violent. America is not worth living in. America has no social security. America is a country in decline. For them, how could they survive without the NHS? If society is so divided, how can we call it a dream? At first glance, it seems reasonable. But the problem is, that's just America on the screen. But real-life America makes many Brits stop in their tracks.
Guys, I think we owe you a big apology, because what we think America's like is exactly not what it's like. Like, the news outlets in the UK say America's this, say America's that, say America's this, say America's that.
When they actually step off the plane, pass through the suburbs, chat with the locals, eat at local eateries, and see how Americans celebrate each other's successes, the story begins to change direction. Not because America is perfect, but because America is not as simple as they were told. Today, we will dissect each of those prejudices.
Would you ever move to America?
No, never. No.
No interest in moving there. It's a complete hole.
No, because I am transgender.
You'd step over there and you already lose like 10 of the rights that you have here.
You see, many British people in interviews answered almost without thinking. No, I would never move to America. Some are concerned about crime. Others say that just turning on the news shows chaotic images, so there's no reason to bet their future there. If you only glance at the headlines that appear every day, it's not hard to understand why they come to such conclusions. But then everything started to change when they set foot in America.
Honestly, people are so nice here. The hospitality is amazing. People are just so accommodating, and anything you want, they will do it. And the thing is, the people here are so nice, so polite, and in the UK, we think the complete opposite.
This is probably a reaction that many people who have moved to another country will also find familiar. Without even setting foot in the US, many people have already reached a conclusion. Don't go there. Very dangerous. It's not worth living there. What is noteworthy is that most of that advice does not come from personal experience, but rather from what they hear, read, or watch. But then most of them feel that everything they had heard, seen, or read was completely wrong when they officially set foot here.
Once you come to America and you experience America, whether it's on holiday, vacation, or moving to this country, that's when you really start to see the real America. And you start to realize that maybe what the media have told you isn't necessarily true.
This is the most interesting point. It's not that the problems in America don't exist. They really exist. But many people have inadvertently taken the most frequently appearing images in the media to represent an entire country. Just think about it. Isn't it unreasonable to look at just a few neighborhoods known for crime and conclude that all of America is like that? A peaceful residential area in the suburbs of Georgia will give you a very different experience from downtown Chicago. Life in Kansas is not like New York. Texas is nothing like California either. Even Americans often say that moving to another state sometimes feels like moving to another country. That is what surprises many British tourists the most. They do not deny that the US still has cities facing many challenges. But they also discovered countless clean, peaceful communities where children still ride their bikes on the streets, neighbors still chat on their porches, and life goes on as normally as anywhere else in the world. Perhaps the biggest mistake is not that the English see the problems of America. The mistake lies in thinking that this is the whole picture. News often takes us to where things are happening. But it is very rare for cameras to appear in the millions of neighborhoods having a peaceful day. If you find this perspective worth pondering, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Such perception shifts appear frequently in today's video. And as the initial prejudice gradually breaks down, another question arises. If America is not as dangerous as they once imagined, then what has led so many British people to admit that they have misunderstood the American people themselves? If there is one thing that surprised many Brits the most after their trip to America, it was not the skyscrapers, the massive pickup trucks, or the supersized portions. What they remember the most is the people.
And how can you hate on this? Like, look, it's just sunny, everywhere's beautiful, the people are nice, they walk down the street, they compliment you, they ask how your day's been, they compliment your outfit, what you're wearing, what you look like.
Before, most Europeans thought that the US is just a bad place that they can never come or rather explore their dreams. But right now, after the World Cup, everything is changing and Europeans out there are saying America is the next place for them to explore their dreams.
Interestingly, many comments from European tourists share the same sentiment. They talk about strangers who proactively open doors for them, store employees who always greet them with a smile, or how just standing around for a few minutes with a map will prompt someone to come over and ask, "Do you need help with something?" Some even joked, in America, sometimes before you even ask, someone is already there to help. So why is the gap between imagination and reality so wide? Part of it lies in cultural differences. The British are accustomed to subtle communication and maintaining a polite distance. In many places in the US, smiling at strangers, striking up conversations in elevators, or complimenting someone's shirt is quite normal. At first, some tourists even thought, are they being too polite? But the longer they stayed, the more they realized that this is simply how Americans build connections in their daily lives.
If we were to look back 4 years from now, the World Cup shouldn't be in the United States if this is how we're going to react.
What would your message be to the Iran players and fans at this World Cup?
First of all, I hope they enjoy themselves. I think they're going to be surprised by the support that they see at the stadium.
This event is meant to celebrate the sport of football. In that context, I believe that everybody's welcome to participate. I hope that despite the actions of a government, they get that message from the fans.
I think the everyday American wants you to feel welcome, to have a good time.
Good luck. I hope that y'all are welcome here because we want to welcome everybody. The World Cup's about bringing people together. It's not about, shutting people out or not letting people in or whatever, It's all about love.
On the internet, people often debate a lot about America. But in real life, what many tourists remember the most are the very small moments. And it is precisely those seemingly ordinary things that completely change their initial impression. What about you? If you've ever been to the US, what surprised you the most about the people here? Please share in the comments. And if you enjoy stories told from a real-life perspective rather than just through headlines, don't forget to like and subscribe to join the channel. But the story doesn't stop there. After changing their views about Americans, many British people discovered something even more surprising. They used to believe that America was a place where everyone only cared about themselves. However, the reality they witnessed was completely the opposite. This is perhaps the most surprising turnaround for many British and Australians. Before coming to the US, many people thought it was an extremely competitive society. Everyone is busy making money. Everyone only cares about themselves. Success means sacrificing relationships and always being on guard against others. But then they witnessed something completely different. An Australian businessman recounted a story that made many viewers stop and think. He said, when he was back home, the day he bought his first Lamborghini was also the day he felt people's gazes change. Some people were annoyed. Some people are sarcastic. Some people looked at him as if to say, "Who do you think you are?" He smiled and said, "I almost feel like my success makes others unhappy." Then he moved to America. The first thing he received was not ridicule, but very different questions. "The car is so beautiful. The car is so beautiful. What do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? How did you achieve that? How did you achieve that?" It sounds simple, but those very questions made him change his perspective on an entire culture. People don't just look at the results. They are curious about the journey. They want to learn. They want to know if they can do the same. A country with more than 340 million people cannot have just one way of thinking. But what is noteworthy is that many foreigners in the interviews mentioned the same feeling. They see that in the US, there exists a culture that encourages others to take risks and dream bigger, rather than assuming that success is something to be questioned.
They were born in that house. How mad is that? Genuinely, people will fill you with encouragement. They'll check on you to see how you're doing, and that's not from a jealousy point of view. That's because they genuinely want you to succeed.
Sociologists even use a rather interesting term to describe the opposite phenomenon in some places, tall poppy syndrome. Simply put, it is the mentality of disliking those who stand out or are too successful, like a flower that grows taller being cut down first. This Australian entrepreneur also said that he felt that difference very clearly after moving to the US. Perhaps this is also why so many immigrants still see the United States as a place worth trying their luck. Not because the path here is easier. In fact, competition in the US can be even more fierce than in many other places. But in the eyes of the people featured in this video, that competition not only creates pressure, but also motivation. It makes them believe that if others can do it, they can also learn and move forward. What about you? Do you prefer a society that values stability or an environment that constantly encourages people to strive for more? Please share your perspective in the comments section. And if you find stories like this offering a different perspective on America, don't forget to like and subscribe to motivate the channel to create more quality videos. But what makes many Brits change their minds doesn't stop there. After gaining a deeper understanding of the culture of success, they began to realize something even more surprising. What they once thought only existed in Hollywood movies turned out to be very present in everyday life in America. Perhaps no phrase has sparked more controversy than the two words American dream. For many British people, it is a concept that belongs to the past. They believe that the cost of living is too high, housing is becoming increasingly expensive, competition is becoming fiercer, and the opportunity for an ordinary person to change their life is almost non-existent. In other words, the American dream has become just a beautiful slogan. But then an Englishman living in the state of Georgia tells his own story, and it makes many people reconsider. He did not come from a wealthy family, no impressive academic record. He wasn't a successful entrepreneur from the start either. He used to do very ordinary jobs, then served in the military. After leaving the military, he returned to civilian life with the feeling of having to start almost from scratch. He once said something very true. "I am just a person who likes to work. I have a wife and children, and every morning when I wake up, what I think about is how to make my family's life better." That very thought brought him to America. Interestingly, he never said that coming to America made everything easy. On the contrary, he admitted that life here is very stressful. Work more. Greater competition. The costs are not low either. But in return, he clearly felt one thing. If he was willing to make an effort, the opportunity to change his life was still present. He started his own business. Income has increased. The family has a larger house than before. There is the car he once dreamed of. More importantly, he said he felt like he was actively deciding his future rather than just accepting what was available. That is the point that many English people in this video also mention. Not everyone who goes to America becomes wealthy. And certainly, not everyone who tries will succeed in the way they desire. But what they see is that the ceiling of opportunity seems wider. If they fail, they still feel there are many other paths to try again. That very feeling makes them believe that the American dream has not disappeared. I really liked a comment from a viewer under the original video. They wrote, "The American dream is not a promise that you will be rich. It is the belief that you still have a chance to try." Perhaps just one sentence like that is enough to explain why many people change their perspective after coming to America. What keeps them here is not just the income level, but also the feeling that the future still holds many doors yet to be opened. If you're still watching at this point, please hit like and subscribe to support the channel. Because the deeper we delve into these stories, the more we find something interesting. Many prejudices about America do not crumble due to statistics, but because of the very ordinary experiences of those who once doubted it. And speaking of everyday experiences, in the next part, we will come to an even more surprising discovery. Many British people used to think that American culture only existed in Hollywood. But when they step outside, they realize that it is everyday life that makes America truly unique. There's a detail I absolutely love in a series of videos of British tourists visiting the US for the first time. They don't rush straight to the Statue of Liberty or the Grand Canyon to shout, "This is America!" What excites them the most are the things that most Americans see every day and hardly pay any attention to. An Irish guy just stepped onto the street and laughed like a child. He pointed at the yellow school bus and said, "It's real." A few seconds later, he ran over to spin a red fire hydrant. Then the rows of trees, the suburban houses with lush green lawns, the mailboxes in front yards. Everything made him excited, as if he were stepping into the very movie he had watched throughout his childhood. Some even joked in the comments, Americans probably can't understand why we are so excited about a bus. But that's the interesting part. Many English people grew up with Hollywood movies, American sitcoms, or school films. They are used to the images of yellow school buses, rugby fields, peaceful suburbs, or wide, straight roads. They just always thought it was a movie set. When they set foot in America, they realized, it turns out Hollywood draws inspiration from everyday life. Then to Costco. A tourist stood in the middle of the store, continuously laughing. Do they really sell everything here? From food, TVs, camping tents, to even modular storage sheds. Another person visited Topgolf for the first time and said, I thought this was just a place to play golf. Who would have thought it was more like a weekend gathering? What about road trips? For many Americans, it's just a few hours' drive to change the scenery. But for many European tourists, that is an experience they have dreamed of for a long time. There was a very interesting comment I read. The English go to America to find Hollywood, but then they discover Hollywood is living right outside their window. It sounds amusing, but it's also very true. American culture is not only found in museums or famous landmarks. It lies in the way neighbors mow their lawns on weekends, the way people gather to watch sports, the way a local diner is packed with customers, or even the way a rest stop on the highway is built large enough for many travelers to stop, just to take a look. Perhaps that is also the reason many people, after their trip, say they miss America not because of a specific landmark, but because of the very ordinary moments. Those simple things come together to form a picture they have never seen on screen. If you've ever had an experience that made you exclaim, "Oh, so that's how it really is in real life," please share it in the comments. And if you enjoy the journey of exploring the very real sides of America, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to give the channel more motivation to bring even more interesting stories. But after all the yellow school buses, suburban neighborhoods, and road trips, there is still a big question that needs to be answered. Why did so many Brits who once believed America was in decline ultimately return with a completely different perspective? That will be the final piece of the puzzle. At this point, perhaps we have reached the most important question of the entire video. Why do so many Brits, after their trip, say something similar? Perhaps we misunderstood America. Interestingly, they don't blame anyone. Instead, they admitted that they had hastily concluded by only looking at America through a screen. An English YouTuber even started his video with a very frank apology. He said, "Perhaps we Brits should apologize to the Americans. Not because everything he heard was wrong, but because he realized the picture he saw before, just a very small part of the whole big picture." Actually, this doesn't only happen in the United States. It's how all our brains work. Psychologists call it availability bias, or simply put, we often judge a situation based on what we see the most. If every day you read the headlines about a country, it's easy to believe that this is the everyday life of the entire nation. But think about it. News often appears when something unusual happens. A peaceful neighborhood where thousands of families wake up, take their children to school, go to work, and then return home to have dinner together will rarely make the headlines. A busy cafe on a Saturday morning, a playground full of children, or quiet residential areas. Those are the things that happen every day, but they rarely make the news simply because there's nothing extraordinary to report. That's why, when many Brits first arrive in the US, they feel like they are stepping into a different country from what they had imagined. Not because the issues previously mentioned have disappeared, they still exist and remain topics worth discussing. But what surprised them was that in such a vast country, there are still countless friendly communities, kind people, and an everyday life that is so ordinary, which they had almost never seen before. There was a comment under the video that resonated with me. The news tells you what's burning, but it rarely shows you the millions of streets that are still peaceful every morning. Perhaps that is not just the story of America. It is also a reminder that any country has many different layers of reality, and it will be very difficult to fully understand it by just looking through a few short videos or headlines. So, perhaps the biggest thing that the British people in this video discovered is not that America is better than they thought. What they discover is the difference between hearing about it and experiencing it for themselves. And sometimes, just one trip is enough to change the things they have believed for many years. If you also believe that real-life experiences always have special value, please like and subscribe to join the channel. And now, we will move on to the final part, where all the pieces will come together to answer the biggest question. After all, have the British really misunderstood America? Or have they just seen another side of the truth? After all the stories we've heard, perhaps it's time for us to answer the biggest question of this video. Have the British been completely wrong in thinking that America is on the decline? In my opinion, the answer is not really. Because the truth is that America is still facing quite a few challenges. The cost of living in many major cities is increasingly high. The healthcare system is always a topic of debate. The competition in the workplace is very fierce, and the differences in societal viewpoints sometimes lead to lively debates. These are all true things, and also the reason why many outsiders view America with caution. But interestingly, after experiencing it firsthand, many of the British people in the videos came to a different conclusion. They don't say that America is perfect, they also do not deny the existing problems. What they are saying is, those issues do not represent all of America. That's a very big difference. An Englishman once shared that what changed his mind was not because he saw a country without difficulties, but because he saw so many people still working hard, still starting businesses, still building careers, still helping their neighbors, and still believing in their future. That very energy is what he couldn't feel when he was only watching America through a screen. There is a comment under the video that has received a lot of agreement. They wrote, "Don't confuse a country with problems with a country that has no hope left." I think this is a very thought-provoking perspective, because every country has its strengths and weaknesses. What keeps America attractive to millions of people is not the absence of challenges, but the belief that their efforts can make a difference. Perhaps that is also the reason why every year many people still choose to come to the US to study, work, or start a new chapter in their lives. Not everyone succeeds. Not everyone finds what they desire. But the feeling that one still has a chance is something very hard to quantify with numbers. If you've watched this far, I also want to ask you a question. In your opinion, what is the biggest attraction of America? Opportunities, people, culture, or some other factor? Please leave a comment below. I would love to read everyone's perspectives. And if you enjoy this series of analyses, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel because there are still many interesting topics ahead waiting for us to explore together. And after the journey, through each prejudice, each experience, and each opposing viewpoint, perhaps we are ready to return to the first question of the video. The British once thought America was in decline. So in the end, what made them change their minds? We will conclude with a brief answer, which is also the most important message of the entire story. After all the stories today, perhaps the most interesting thing is not that the British have changed their view of America. The more interesting thing is that they realized they had been viewing an entire vast country through a very small window. Initially, many people believed that America was only about violence, division, high costs, and a dream that no longer existed. But when they experienced it firsthand, they discovered a fuller picture. And America is still facing many challenges, but also still full of opportunities. An imperfect America still with friendly communities. Perhaps that is what makes millions of people around the world still want to set foot in America at least once. Not because they think this place is paradise, but because they believe that in a place where many opportunities always exist, their future can still change. And what about you? In your opinion, have the British truly misunderstood America, or have they simply uncovered another facet of the truth? If given the opportunity, would you want to live or work in the US? And what is your biggest impression of America? The people, the culture, the opportunities, or something completely different? Please share your perspective in the comments section. I always read a lot of your comments, and who knows, your opinion might appear in the next video. If you enjoy reaction videos combined with in-depth analysis of the economy, society, and culture of America from a multifaceted perspective like this, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new content. Your support is a great motivation for the channel to continue bringing more interesting, objective, and thought-provoking stories. This video is based on the shares, experiences, and personal viewpoints of the quoted individuals, combined with the channel's commentary and analysis to provide a multifaceted perspective and encourage discussion. The content does not claim that these experiences represent the entire United States or all British people. Each country has its strengths and challenges, and each individual will have different experiences depending on their circumstances, location, and perspective. The most important message the video wants to convey is, always be open, seek information from multiple sources, and if possible, experience it yourself before drawing any conclusions. Thank you for taking the time to watch. See you in the next video.